Hello all. Today is the birthday holiday of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we're here to hear from a few speakers. And I would like to start, I would like to start with a quote from Dr. King. I contend that the cry of black power is at bottom, a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think that we have got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. Yes. And that was the quote of Dr. King. So good afternoon all. I am Joseph Selman, a 73-year-old senior, veteran, and active member of Black Lives Matter of New York. Today we are here to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., a social activist and Baptist minister. Dr. King had played a key role in the American Civil Rights Movement from the mid-50s until his assassination in 1968. Happy Martin's Day to all. Let us not forget Byron Rushton, another hero from the African American and LGBTQ community. Byron Rushton was an African American leader for social justice, civil rights, nonviolence, and gay rights. He helped to organize the March on Washington. For jobs and freedom in 1963. He was a trusted advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King and worked alongside Ella Baker and later became the head of the AFL-CIO, A. Philip Randolph Institute. Rustin was a gay man who had been arrested early in his career for engaging in public sex. In the 1980s, he became a public advocate on behalf of gay causes, speaking at events as an activist and supporter of human rights. Obama posthumously awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Today is indeed a special day, in that it was in 1983 that President Reagan had signed the federal law establishing the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday. 1983 also was significant for me personally. It was that year I graduated from CUNY. It was also my time of becoming politically aware, or woke, as some might say. It has led me to being the social justice activist I am today. As we all experience this pandemic, the likes that this country has not seen since the last pandemic in 1918. Today, we are approaching 400,000 deaths. 400,000 deaths as a result of COVID-19. Let us pray for all those who have lost a family and or friend to this decade. Coming to an end here. Today, we are at the Stonewall Inn, the historic Stonewall Inn. This is a national monument to the LGBT community. The June riot of 1969 at the Stonewall marked the turning point in the fight for LGBT rights. It was a hot summer night in June when the NYPD raided the Stonewall, which we are standing in front of today. A bar that served as a haven for the city's gay, lesbian, and transgender community. Let me end by saying that our fight continues. We thank the Black Lives Matter movement for keeping the matter of racial justice and inequality alive. Let us have a moment of silence for the families from all over who have lost a loved one to the criminal and likes of the NYPD. So we will have a moment for silence. and thank you. So to that we say no justice, no peace. Thank you. Let me also say, and before I announce the next speaker, this is the lady who has been involved with her community. She's happened to be running for city council. Her name is Marni Halasa. And I believe we need to have more white allies like Marty to really represent what we've seen happen in this city. So with that, I introduce Marty. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, everyone. You guys, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. So, you guys know me. My name is Marni Halasa. I'm a candidate for city council in this district right here, District 3. And Martin Luther King spent his life trying to eradicate poverty, discrimination, and the lack of opportunity to black and brown people. And I know we are all here to do our part on this mission. So on this day, I thought it was very appropriate to organize a protest to call for the elimination of the NYPD's Vice Squad. That's known for harassing and engaging in discrimination against the LGBTQ community. Now, there's been a lot of talk nowadays about dismantling the NYPD, demilitarizing it, defunding and reimagining it, so it becomes more of a public safety organization. But I think everyone sort of agrees that getting rid of the Vice Squad, which is essentially policing morality in the 21st century, is something we can all get behind. Because evidence shows that it is a hotbed of corruption, harming trans women, gay men, sex workers, and low-income people of color. So one of the groups targeted by the NYPD's Vice Squad are sex workers. And I'm glad that there is a move to decriminalize sex work, because sex work is work. But we also cannot forget that the right to privacy is an established legal precedent. I go back to the landmark Supreme Court case of Griswold versus Connecticut. That case established the right to privacy between married, consenting adults engaging in intimate relations using contraception. But as time has gone on, the definition of privacy is actually expanded to also include a right to privacy, especially within the LGBTQ community. In Bowers v. Hardwick, another landmark case, the court stated that a Texas anti-sodomy statute was unconstitutional, violating the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that adults are entitled to participate in private consensual sexual conduct. But even with this right to privacy, the NYPD are still making sex work a crime, targeting and ensnaring the most vulnerable people of color, including women, trans, and the LGBT youth, as well as men of color walking down the street in Black and Latino communities. The media site ProPublica found that arrests of people buying and selling sex are often false arrests, based entirely on the word of one undercover officer, and that exchanges between officers and targets are inconsistently reported and disclosed. Since 2014, New York City has had to pay more than $1 million in taxpayer funds to settle false arrest lawsuits. In interviews, current and former officers said overtime pay was a significant driver of the arrests, which are made by the Vice Squad in neighborhood precincts. And in an April 2019 letter, Assemblyman Dan Quartz and 3 other lawmakers described the Vice Unit as a traditional hotbed of corruption, citing the arrest of a former detective who was running a prostitution ring, the death of a sex worker during a Vice raid, and accusations against another officer who allegedly participated in sex acts with people he arrested. This is called corruption, and it's discrimination that's hurting our citizens. And given all this, it's really easy to come to the same conclusion that we need to get rid of the NYPD's Vice Squad. If the NYPD cannot be trusted to not engage in abusive behavior against regular citizens, we need to make that decision for them. So if I'm elected legislatively, I would completely eliminate the Vice Squad. So since the days, hey Allie, Since the days of police raids on gay bars, the LGBTQ community has been asking for an end to the discrimination by the Vice Squad. But as we have seen in recent years, our LGBTQ elected officials have turned their backs on the uprising for equal civil rights that have made their political careers a possibility. Well, I am making this promise to you on this solemn day of remembrance. If I am elected to City Council, one of my first acts will be to introduce a bill to close down the Vice Squad. I'm not going to turn my back on the LGBTQ community. I have your back. We are in this fight together to dismantle systemic racism and systemic discrimination together. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, this is my friend, Paul. Paul and I have been best friends since we were 13 years old, figure skating in Cleveland, Ohio. So he's like my oldest and dearest friend.
Unfortunately, this is true. So, good afternoon, everyone. As you said, my name is Paul, and I'm sorry?
Talk a little louder.
Oh, sorry. May I take this off briefly? So, yes. So I'm here to talk about an experience that I had back in 1992. I was a dancer at the time. I was at Tisch, NYU, and I was actually waiting in line to buy a subway token back in the days when we still had tokens. And there was a long line, and a subway car came, and I just... Oh, really? There's not that many people. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, but we can put double what we see right
Yes.
now. Just ask about
I don't want to really announce it to the internet. I'd rather not. Sorry. Anyway, the subway came, and I foolishly jumped the subway turnstile and was arrested by undercover policemen. And this was a time when I was shoved against a wall, handcuffed, thrown into a paddy wagon with other fare evaders, and taken to a central booking station. And while I was being processed, one of the officers, I asked one of the officers how long it was going to take, and he asked why, and I said I have a dance rehearsal. And just the fact that I had a dance rehearsal was enough in his mind to automatically assume that I was gay. I mean, I am, but that's not the point. But it started with immediate sexual harassment, calling me homo and faggot and queer, and joking with the other officers, and which ultimately it led to being sexually assaulted by the police officer. I was the last one of the fare evaders. I was in a holding cell for 6 hours. I was the last one to be let out. And I won't go into the specifics, but nevertheless, it's definitely colored how my life and the way I view officers in the police department even today. I did at the time seek help, legal aid, help from the Gay and Lesbian Anti-Defamation League. I filed a complaint within the police department, and even though there were a couple of other officers present and saw what was happening, they all said that I was lying and nothing was done. Now, mind you, this was 1992. Hopefully things have changed somewhat, but nevertheless, things need to change even further. But as a result of this, even currently, I am actually working on a film project that will be fictionalized, but it will tell the story of this event. And the other thing that I want to say is, once again, that things are still happening today. It was just 2 gay prides ago that after the parade, I was actually at the monster, and I witnessed there was a police beating right outside, almost at the corner of Westport and Christopher Street. So it's not that long ago, where I don't know the specifics of what happened, but as we were coming out, we saw, I even tried to get my camera out and film, but a policeman was brutally beating someone up over something that transpired, but nevertheless, the force that he used was definitely inappropriate. And we were just, even though police officers during the whole parade were nice and friendly and pretending to be our friends, once this transpired, we were pushed out of the way, pushed in the opposite direction so that we could not see what had transpired. So I am, advocating with Marni to have the vice squad defunded because eliminated
Yes.
rather, not defunded, but eliminated, and the funds put to more appropriate uses to make it more community-based, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ communities, sex workers, and people of color. So that is my story, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And these were also invasions of privacy. At the time, we had LGBT representation in government, as we do now. But our representatives didn't do anything to protect us from this discrimination and from these invasions of privacy. I've been a New Yorker now for 22 years, but I've done my history. This very council district was redrawn in order to help elect an LGBT politician from the community to represent us in government. So why are we still fighting to end the most oppressive form of discrimination against us? I'm talking about discrimination based on our own sexuality. This kind of discrimination and oppression hasn't yet ended. It hasn't ended because the vice unit still exists. Who here remembers when City Council member Tom Duane was our representative? Anytime an LGBT New Yorker was brutalized, profiled, or arrested, people ran to his office for help. He was our help. But that wasn't enough to end the discrimination. When Christine Quinn was the executive director of the Anti-Violence Project, who here remembers the press conferences, the marches, the fundraising done in the name of ending NYPD discrimination? All of that wasn't enough to put an end to the vice unit. Through Christine Quinn, you had a seat at the table of Mayor Giuliani's Police Community Relations Task Force. Did you get an end to the NYPD discrimination then? No, you didn't. Quinn's successor is Corey Johnson. Last year, he saw it fit to play games with budget gimmicks and accounting tricks over actually beginning the hard work of defunding the NYPD. That's the kind of leadership you've been getting out of this community. Now comes Corey's right-hand man, Eric Botcher. He believes he deserves to be crowned as the next city council member from this district. He's taking it for granted. He's maxed out on donations. He's getting all the endorsements from this district. He believes it's his birthright to be your representative. I looked up his Twitter feed. Not once did he tweet out the Black Lives Matter hashtag until it became politically expedient for him to do it. What does that tell you? For 30 years, you have had an LGBT representative in this council district for 30 years. For 11 out of the last 15, that representative was the council speaker. You had more than a seat at the table of power. Your council representative was power. What has become self-evident to me is that the community's political power is only triggered when it becomes politically expedient. Only then all we get is symbolism. We never get real relief from discrimination. I'm tired of the community safety nights that the Anti-Violence Project have to hold. I'm tired of the press conferences by AVP, Make the Road, Street Lies and Safe, the Audre Lorde Project, by Fierce, by Communities United for Police Reform, and the LGBT Community Center. This is the only response you get to more and more crisis in this community. 50 years ago, the NYPD vice raids went too far. They finally crossed the line, and we got the Stonewall riots for it. People said that was enough. Excuse me. Today we have to say enough is enough. The vice unit and their raids, the sting operations against gay men, the sting operations against sex workers, the arrests of trans women of color, all of this must finally come to an end. You have a choice this year to finally elect someone who's going to put an end to the vice unit. People have been saying for 30 years we're going to end the discrimination. It still hasn't happened. It still hasn't happened. On June 22, I'm asking you to rank Marni Halasa as your first choice for City Council District number 3. So you can finally begin to see the end of discrimination by the NYPD. So many people have given their lives. So many people have given their lives. As a result of the discrimination, the violence, and the hate. And electoral politics isn't the only answer. It takes the community to hold power to account. It takes everybody to hold power to account. And it's our job right now to hold the people in power today to account. And one way to do that is to say you're going to support Marni Halasa. Because either she gets elected and she changes the policy, or the people in power get scared and they change the policy for you. Either way, we're going to win. But I'm asking you to support Marni for City Council on June 22.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis. Thank you.
My name is Ronald Haney. Ronald Haney. Haynie. You can follow me on Instagram under that name, Ronald Haney. You can follow me on Facebook under the name Ronald Haney. Right now I'm about to do something for you never done. They said it couldn't be done. Thank you, sweetheart. They said it couldn't be done. No one would ever believe that the I Have a Dream speech could be performed in fluent Spanish by the Afro-American by memory. So, por ejemplo, ahora. Yo estoy orgulloso de reunirme con ustedes hoy día. I'll wait for you. Mi hermana. Mi hermana.
I hope that I have it all back.
Yeah. Primera en la historia. All right? I ain't all that Spanish. Yo estoy orgulloso de reunirme con ustedes hoy día. En esta que será en la historia la más grande demostración para la libertad en la historia de nuestro país. Hace 100 años, un gran americano en cuya simbólica sombra estamos hoy parados, firmó la proclamación de la emancipación. Este trascendente decreto vino como un gran rayo de luz de esperanza para millones de esclavos negros chamuscados en las llamas de una maldita injusticia. Vino como un lindo amanecer al final de una larga noche de cautiverio. Entonces les digo a ustedes, mis amigos, que aunque nosotros enfrentemos las dificultades de hoy y de mañana, aún yo tengo un sueño. Es un sueño profundamente arraigado en el sueño americano. Yo tengo un sueño que un día esta nación surgirá y vivirá verdaderamente de su credo. Nosotros mantenemos estos derechos potentes que todo hombre es criado igual. Y cuando esto pase, y cuando dejemos resonar la libertad, cuando la dejemos resonar de cada aldea y cada caserío, de cada estado y cada ciudad, podemos apurar el día en que todos los hijos de Dios, hombre negro y hombre blanco, judíos y cristianos, protestantes y católicos, podemos unir nuestras manos y cantar en las palabras del viejo espiritual negro. Libre al fin, gracias a Dios Todopoderoso, somos libres al fin. You can watch that, the entire 15 minutes on YouTube. Just type in Ronald Haney, Yo Tengo Un Sueño, and now what got Dr. King the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize. As quick as I can, King Express. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languishes in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was the full heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as the citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxuries of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise out of the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope the Negro needed to blow off steam and will be content will be in for a rude awakening if this nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America unless the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there's one thing I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must continue to conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights to meet physical force. with soul force. The marvelous new militancy, which has engulfed the Negro community, must not lead us to the mistrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity with signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, no, we are not satisfied and will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you come here today from great trials and tribulations. Some of you come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered with the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing the situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and equality. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will be able to live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, right there down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and every mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. So let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. So let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. So let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. So let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. So let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. So let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet and every state and every city. This will speed up that day when all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
That was amazing. That was fantastic.
Well, God bless you.
My God. Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.